Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Kayla and today I'm going to be talking about an ayahuasca experience I had recently. If you've stumbled upon this video and you do not know what ayahuasca is a plant medicine that has been used for I don't know how many years, but a very long time in the Amazon. I am currently in beautiful Costa Rica and have been here for almost 2 weeks. I was lucky enough to partake in an ayahuasca ceremony here. As of now, I've done 6 ayahuasca ceremonies. I will be sharing with you my 4th ceremony experience. It's funny because after my 4th and 5th experience, I kind of was thinking that I wasn't going to make a video like this because the information was so fresh in my brain and I was like, I don't really want to share too much, but I realized that I can share what I'm able to share and then I can leave some parts for myself. For some reason, I thought that me making this video, I wanted to share every little detail of what happened, but it is important that some information is very sacred to my heart and will not be sharing today, but I will be sharing the most important parts with you. If you don't know, ayahuasca is also a psychedelic medicine. I did have some visuals. I normally do not have visuals on ayahuasca, but I did this time around. In the first part of my ceremony, I was kind of just chilling, just vibing after the first cup. All of a sudden, I see the shamans dancing and singing with each other. I think they're husband and wife. If they're not, they're partners. And it just inspired me so much, and I was watching them and I'm like, wow, it reminds me of me and Haruki. And then I started to feel this immense amount of guilt for a lot of things in me and Haruki's relationship. Nothing that he necessarily made me feel guilty for, but it was just within myself. And I realized that I was carrying a lot of guilt with me for some reason. And there are reasons to this guilt, but I will not be sharing those with you just because I'm not the only one in this situation. I was carrying a lot of guilt in this situation, and luckily enough, my husband is so receptive to me speaking to him about issues and stuff, so we've talked through this and everything is fine now. But at the time of ceremony, I was crying a lot because I felt really guilty for certain things, maybe certain opportunities that he missed out on that I felt was my fault, or things of that nature, or even just I felt in a sense that he was kind of pulled away from his friends because we started living together and he wasn't living with them anymore. And that wasn't anything to do with me necessarily, but it did feel like it was part of my fault. So those were some things that I felt guilty about. I was crying a lot. I started getting really vivid visions pretty much the whole night, honestly. There were so many visions and it seemed like the visions would change every time the music would change. One of these visions, I was on a porch with Mama Ayahuasca and we were just chatting it up. We were just talking as if we were best friends. It was pretty cool. There was a song that reminded me of my childhood, and I saw children's toys and all these different things that reminded me of childhood, and it was so beautiful. I can't even really begin to explain the visions I saw, but it was really, really beautiful, and I'm really happy that I got to experience that because I had never really experienced that many visions before, but it felt like a theatrical show. That's what it felt like. It felt like ayahuasca was just giving me a beautiful show, and it felt so amazing, and her energy felt so gentle. This ceremony, my 4th ceremony, I felt her energy so gently that I've never felt her be that gentle before. I also barely felt sick at all, and when I would feel sick, I would thank ayahuasca for not making me as sick as I was in previous ceremonies. I'd be like, oh my gosh, thank you so much for not making me as sick as I was before. I'm so grateful to experience this without the sickness. And I even told her, I'm more receptive to yawning and crying as my way of purging. And then I figured out another way of my purging was shaking, but I don't know if I shaked during this ceremony, but I shaked in other ceremonies. Yeah, so I yawned and cried a lot this ceremony. And then I started having visions of my childhood, and I realized that I had a really bad relationship in general with men generally. Not necessarily just specific men, but just men in general. I had a really negative experience with men in the past. I've had multiple amounts of sexual trauma, which I've not really talked about on my channel, but that's something I released in the breathwork prior to this ceremony, which I'm super grateful for because I feel so much lighter now, and that's just wild. If you want to hear about that, I am open to talking about that, but yeah, let me know if you want to hear about my breathwork ceremony because that was pretty interesting as well. I haven't really talked about breathwork on my channel before. Breathwork has been a very powerful thing for me. So I started realizing that men created the society we live in, and I had 2 perspectives of this. So the first perspective was that I started realizing new perspective I've never had before. I realized like they've literally built almost everything that we have, and if it weren't for men, we wouldn't have these houses, we wouldn't have cars, we wouldn't have all of these things that we use on a daily basis. I probably wouldn't have this camera. I'm sure this camera was designed by a man, and of course women take part in it. You know, we birthed these men into this world. In reality, it takes two to tango, and men did create the majority of the world. So I had such a deep appreciation for men in the ceremony, and still to this day, like I have such a deep appreciation for men. And I also realized that my dad built my house that I grew up in since the age of 10. I knew that, but I guess I didn't really think about it. I'm like, damn, my dad built a house. And he not only built my house, but he built several other houses in the area, and he also helped build my grandma and grandpa's house, and he also helped reconstruct my grandma's house next door to us. He is part of the reason why there's so much architecture in the area of what I grew up in, and I probably look at certain houses not even realizing that my dad built them. I just had a new appreciation for him and all of the men who created this society. I started thinking about my little brother, and I realized that I felt scared of him, and the reason why I felt scared of him was because he was very violent towards me when I was young, and there was a lot of physical fights, and not just like normal brotherly sister fights. They were pretty intense. I'm not gonna go into detail, but yeah, like I really did get hurt, and he also got hurt from me, and our relationship wasn't really the best growing up. It's a lot better now, but I realized to this day I still carry the trauma in me, because anytime he like comes around behind me, I get scared that he's gonna like hit my back. So I realized that I'm still afraid of him. Part of the reason why he gets so frustrated and why he acts out in violence is because of things that run in the family, and also he cannot talk. He was born with a genetic disorder called trisomy 9p, and so he can't speak. He can walk and he can do things that any normal person can do. His balance is a little off, he has behavioral issues, but he cannot speak. Made me feel a sense of compassion for him as well, which I've felt before, but this time it was much deeper. He doesn't have a voice to express himself in the way that everybody else does, so I kind of realized what that must be like as well. I realized that my grandmother on my mom's side carried a lot of guilt. Ayahuasca actually like picked me up and brought her to her while she was sleeping, and I entered her body and felt what she felt. Now, I had heard of this happening to other people, and I was like, whoa, that's pretty trippy, but like once you experience something like this, it's pretty wild. I didn't know what my grandma was feeling at the time. I realized when I was in her body that she was feeling an immense amount of guilt for the things that have happened within my family, and it makes sense now that I look at it, but yeah, I'm not gonna go into why. It's very personal stuff. It's a lot of things to do with my family that have happened that I may or may not share in the future. The birds would like you to hear them. Wait. Oh my goodness. Okay, Mother Nature is loud right now. I realized that my grandma was feeling a lot of guilt, and I think I was really upset recently before the ayahuasca ceremony, because every time she comes around, she's very like depressed and in a depressed mood. She's always saying that she's bored with everything, she has nothing to do, all this stuff that like old people say, right? I get really annoyed because I'm like, I want like happy, good vibes. Like I don't want to be around someone who's depressed, but I also want to spend time with her. So it's like this thing going back and forth where I'm just like, dang, I really want her to be happy, but it seems like anything she does, she's not happy. And I realized one of the big reasons why is because she's carrying so much guilt in her life. Maybe also guilt from not living the way that she wanted to live when she was younger. Maybe she feels like it's too late. But yeah, that was something that I realized during my ceremony, and it made me have a lot more compassion for my grandmother. I later called my mom about it after ceremony, and I expressed this to her as well, and I think it also helped my mom to realize what she might be going through too. I also realized that me and my mother are carrying this guilt with us too, because it runs in the DNA. So it's literally not just my grandma and the things that she's gone through, it's ancestral stuff that our ancestors have gone through that they felt guilty for. So I didn't necessarily release this guilt, but I recognized that it was there. Everything seems a lot more clear now. I feel like I got a lot of clarity on a lot of things. My grandma always feels like she needs to be distracted, or else she will continue to feel this guilt, which makes sense as to why she says she's bored all the time and why she wants to go for rides and do all these things just to be distracted so that she doesn't have to sit with her emotions and feelings. I also realized that my dad was a truck driver when I was growing up. Now he's a bus driver, but he was a truck driver, so I was also in his body at one point and was like driving this big truck, which was such a weird feeling for me. but I realized that he was alone in his thoughts all the time. I realized that driving for him was a sense of meditation, and that he was able to really sit with his thoughts and observe them, which I never really noticed about my dad. He's not into spirituality at all from what I can see. He's very quiet about what he believes in. I really don't know what he believes in, but I realized that driving truck was a sense of meditation for him, and it's really interesting for me to think about, because I'm like, yeah, meditating isn't just sitting in lotus pose or like laying down and listening to a meditation. Meditation could be so many different things for different people, and I realized that men create this world so that women can enjoy it and also be of service to men as well, and we need each other so much in the masculine and feminine energy, and we both need to be balanced, of course. But I realized that it is very beneficial for women to appreciate, like truly appreciate men and the things that they've created so that we are able to live this life. I also have realized, and I realized this before ayahuasca, but I feel like I've felt an immense amount of guilt for the family that I have. I don't really like to tell people about my family because I used to think the things that I went through was normal, and it's very not normal. And so I realized that I felt a very big amount of guilt for my family, and I felt guilt for if I were to bring a child into this world, into my family DNA. I was really worried about it. I didn't really want to tell people what I've gone through or things that my family has done, because it's some really not great stuff, and I feel like sometimes people's family is a reflection of them, and I feel like my family is not a reflection of me at all. I feel like I've grown a lot, and I feel like I'm breaking all these like generational curses almost. I feel very different from the rest of my family. I always have. I guess I always just felt so ashamed for the family that I grew up in. The last part of my ceremony, I started hearing auditory, which I normally don't get audio in my ayahuasca experiences, but I started hearing yelling, and I recognized this yelling from somewhere, and this yelling occurred to me when I was a child. I used to think that I had some form of schizophrenia. I've never really told many people this, but I used to think that that was something that I dealt with when I was a kid, because I would see like ghosts and I would see spirits. I would also hear yelling, like it would be so random. I would just be doing a random thing and I would hear yelling, like a bunch of people yelling in like almost a different language. I didn't know what they were saying, but I knew they were angry. And ayahuasca expressed to me that this was very much real for me, and that it wasn't schizophrenia, and that because it went away as I went into like my, preteen years. And she said that this was from my past life. She asked me if I wanted to see. I said no, because I wasn't ready yet. I wasn't ready to see what I went through in a past life. It sounded kind of scary to me. So I did tell her no, and she respected that. So she didn't show me like where it came from, but I got a good sense of feeling where it could have came from. I had an experience of a past life in a previous ceremony, so I kind of feel like it was that past life. I don't really necessarily know where the yelling came into play. I just know that there was a lot of yelling in my past life, and there was also a lot of yelling in my childhood as well. I also saw myself really good friends with somebody at the ceremony, and it was really interesting because I would have never thought that I would be friends with this person. I love this person, they're amazing, but just I never would have thought, I guess. But I saw myself like really good friends with them, bringing snacks over to their house. Like it was a vibe. So I was like, I wonder if that'll happen in the future, or maybe that happened in a past life, or maybe that's happening right now. I don't know. So that was my ceremony that happened on the 9th of November 2023, and it was a very gentle ceremony. I was very surprised as to what I went through, because before this ceremony, I'm not gonna lie, I think I felt very nervous for it for some reason, which I had never really been this nervous for an ayahuasca ceremony before, but for some reason I was very nervous, and this eased my nerves so much and gained my trust back with ayahuasca. And I felt like this was more of me just really connecting with ayahuasca, and so I felt like this was like a very much connection ceremony for me. Thank you so much for tuning in and watching today's video. I truly appreciate you being here. If you'd like to see more of my ayahuasca experiences, I have a couple more videos coming out. I also have some vlogs of me in Costa Rica with my soul family, and thank you again so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!